Joining me. My name is Chris. I guess y'all all know that. And y'all welcome y'all to So I Did a Thing Live. My guest tonight, I'm super excited about this. Y'all have seen me, I did a review, and I use the word review lightly because I'm not like an author or an official book review or anything, but I read her book and then did a quick little review video on it and told kind of how it spoke to me and talked about her a little bit in the post and all that. So I'm going to bring out April. My guest tonight is April Hernandez. Hi, April.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I am really, really good. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. I appreciate it.
Of course.
Yeah. So we've got a couple of people watching. Nobody is commenting though. Y'all comment and let me know you're here. So yeah, April, I saw a post. We'll just tell real quick how we connected. And that's kind of the beauty of this platform really is how all this came about. Because I'd have never in a million years ever even heard of her or, gotten to know her if it hadn't been for LinkedIn. Because I hadn't really heard of her up until then. But she did a post on healing or hope or something like that having to do with surviving intimate partner abuse. And I just thought how cool it was that she was so open and willing to share her story. So I connected with her, looked at her profile, kind of saw some of the things she had done as far as like acting and speaking and her writing a book, which we're going to talk about here in a minute. And so we just kind of got to talking a little bit, and I'd asked her to come on my live and she agreed. And in between the time I asked and now, I bought the book and read it. And that book was it was bomb for real. It really had some stuff in there that, whether have been in an abusive relationship or not, it will speak to you and help you with the healing process and just kind of, give you a little bit of hope. So that's kind of how we met on that. You want to add anything to that?
Yeah, it's one of those things where, we talk about people having real connections on LinkedIn. Mm-hmm. I think LinkedIn has been the only platform where if someone sends you a DM, you already know the culture, and depending on the tone of the DM.
Right. Exactly.
Let me make that very clear.
Yeah, exactly.
The tone, where it's really just fascinating that you can connect with people from around the world. Yeah. and just respect one another and really see like, oh wow, I really like their posts. I don't know people personally, but just from what I read, and I would always look at your stuff, and you and I are always piggybacking and like, oh, that was great, this was awesome. Mm-hmm. And the sense of community that people build is powerful. So this truly is a connection from LinkedIn. Yeah. And when you asked me, I was like, oh, great. Yeah, why not? I mean, this is like my third one doing one of these. And I did one with a woman from Germany, and I did one with, another friend. And it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, this is the purpose, This is the whole point of it. So that's how we met. And it's always cool. I really appreciate your honesty in talking about like your story and being in prison. Mm-hmm. That is something you rarely ever see on LinkedIn. And I thought that was like, wow, you have to have some, how can I keep it PG? You have to be so courageous. Wink, wink. To put yourself out there like that.
Yeah.
Especially in a professional setting.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it was important. I was very blessed coming out and, had an awesome support network, got a job fairly quickly, and have stayed here and kind of worked my way up. That's not always the norm with people coming out of prison. And so I just kind of felt like it was important to address it and kind of bring awareness to it and hopefully bring some hope to the guys and bring awareness to people that kind of had a bad taste in their mouth for felons.
Right. Yeah, and why not just put it out there in the world instead of having to
Yeah.
be afraid of it or ashamed of it.
Hmm.
Everybody, I mean, until you've been in prison, you don't know what it's like.
Right.
It's the same thing as until you've been abused, violated.
Yeah.
It's very hard for me to paint you a picture
Hmm.
because sometimes it's very difficult to understand why someone would remain in an abusive relationship.
Yeah. Exactly.
So that's not anything that I recommend anyone doing.
Exactly.
Like, no, you don't need to do it.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it's awesome.
And here is Kenny. I think he said I think he said what you were trying to say, Kenny.
Thanks, Kenneth. You said exactly what I was thinking. Just, I don't know who's watching, so
Yeah. Wink, wink.
wink,
Exactly.
wink.
Yeah. So tell us about the book. Like it had to, as I was reading it, I was like, man, this had to have been like, I'm sure, that's not something that ever goes away, but what was it like to have to really think about it and relive everything to be able to put it down on paper to get your point across, to get the whole point of the book out there for people to read and to see?
Right. Um, well, the book Embracing Me, just in case if someone's just
Right.
watching, I wrote it at the height of the pandemic. And it was one of those moments where, my life as a speaker, as an actor, everything was shut down. And my
Mhm.
friend who published my book, um, he says, I have a first book, and that book that was so early on in my creativity that when I wrote that book, I spoke about my abuse, but it was just very like, it wasn't as in depth. And my friend really encouraged me to say, like, there's so many parts of your life that you left out. I wonder why. And I thought to myself, well, yeah, I don't know. He's like, yeah, people want to know about Hollywood. They want to know about like your life. And I just always assume people don't, because that's just me. I,
Well, that
I'm
just
like,
speaks to the humility of you. You know what I mean?
right.
Like,
Yeah, because it's one of those where you're like, really? People care? My friend is like, yeah, people want to know. And I said, okay, cool. Um, and so writing, I had already done a lot of healing on myself.
mhm.
There were certain parts, like talking about my mother. My mother passed away 4 years ago. So that was a relationship that was tumultuous even until her last breath. Um, and I don't think many people write about that.
Mhm.
It's one of those things where we always expect, unfortunately, that the father is the one that gives you problems or issues. And for
Mhm.
me, it was the opposite.
Mhm.
So writing about my mom freely, that was really intense. And embracing it is continuous. And I thought there was something profound about the thought of it being embraced. You as an individual embracing yourself, and then others embracing you. Because I think we talk about that so much, but
Mhm.
do we ever really do it? And what does it really look like?
Yep. Um, Kenny got me distracted here. I'm sorry. He heard me typing typing the link. Yeah, that's kind of one of the things that kind of stuck out to me too, was the fact that it was your mother you had the issues with and not your father.
Hmm.
And how hard that must have been, especially for a girl, um, to have been pushed away more or less like that.
Hmm.
Do you think that had anything to do with you staying in the abusive relationship?
I'm sure it played a factor without me really being conscious of it. But once I left the relationship, and then years down the line, because I didn't start talking about my abuse until like 10, 11 years later.
Mm-hmm.
Um, as I started doing the work, I wanted to know the pathology, right? That
Mm-hmm.
where did that come from?
Mm-hmm.
Because I didn't see my dad. Like my dad abused my mom.
Right.
You know, I mean, I grew up in the 80s during the crack era
Mm-hmm.
in a typical Puerto Rican home. So, you know, we were all pretty aggressive. But I'm
Right.
saying like a typical, you know, like my dad just beating my mom and speaking to her disrespectfully. That is not what I was that wasn't the norm for me. But what I
Mm-hmm.
did find out was both, obviously, as you read, both of my parents were abused as children.
Mm-hmm.
So that spirit,
Yeah.
that thing latched on to me.
Yeah.
And that's when I was able to be like, holy cow. Like when we hear of generational curses,
Yeah.
here it is.
Mm-hmm.
Because it was already birthed in both of my parents.
Yeah.
And as much as they did their best, you know, my mom, she was always emotionally unavailable to me, but her level of emotional and verbal abuse became really just more aggressive in my late teenage years and as I grew into a woman.
Mm-hmm.
And I was able to identify that once I had the language
Mm-hmm.
to be like, you are abusing me.
Right.
Right. So can you imagine now, like all of these things, it makes sense now
Right.
in retrospect of why I landed in an abusive relationship.
Mm-hmm. And I think you said it and perfectly, was the generational curses. People
Mm-hmm.
don't really realize how much of a real thing that is. Um, you know, whether it's abuse or whether it's addiction or whatever it is, that's a
Right.
very real thing, and it carries down from generation to generation until it's broken.
Right.
Yep.
Right. And the same thing, like with, you know, alcoholism, like we don't
Yeah.
realize that it can multiply itself and it is something that is passed down, which, you know, and also the fact that I'm not addicted to anything when both of my parents were addicts, that's just, I think that's just God's grace.
Yeah. Yeah. Both of my parents, or my dad was a drug addict before, well, up until I was young. I mean, he smoked weed and did a few other things. My mom, not so much, but it still carried down to me whenever, and it didn't really hit me until I was 24 when I started using drugs. And,
Right.
but it hit me, you know, like it's
Mm-hmm.
going to until that's broken.
Right. And it's, you know, like it's amazing that we have that awareness.
Yeah.
Do you have children?
I do not.
Yes, I think we briefly spoke about this,
I
you know,
have
because you
4
always
daughters.
see me posting about my kids,
Mhm.
you know, my daughter, and it's one of those things where I had to make a very conscious decision,
Mhm.
and spiritually
Yeah.
saying this ends
Mhm.
with me. Like
Yeah.
whatever it is that needs to happen in the spiritual realms,
Yeah. It's
this
done.
cycle, this like repeating this, whatever that was, that I break it, you
Yeah.
know, and it's actually just saying those words, like it
Yeah.
stops with me,
Yeah.
like no more. And so when people ask me about like how did you leave your abusive relationship, I always tell people we all have a threshold, whatever that is for you, right? If you are professionally in a place that is toxic, everyone has a threshold in saying either I continue here or I quit
Mhm.
because this isn't helping me. I don't want to work in a place where I'm constantly having fear, constantly feeling like people are speaking down to me. Like, when do you have that moment where you're saying it is done? I'd rather be broke than have you know, anxiety. I'd rather just leave my job and take a leap of faith because it's just too much. So that threshold eventually breaks. And for me, you know, I had my threshold of saying I can't take this abuse any longer
Mhm.
as a teenager.
Yep. Um, and my wife, before she married me, she was married to a guy that beat the hell out of her all the time, and then was very emotionally and you know mentally abusive. And she stayed for a long time. And kind of like you, she finally had that threshold where enough was enough. And
Right.
that's always fascinated me. Not like fascinated, like, oh, wow, in a good way, but just
Right.
the fact that people stay in abusive relationships like that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've never experienced it, so I can't it's hard for me to sympathize or empathize with that or understand that, but it happens, and it's such a weird thing. But it's, you get stuck.
Mm-hmm. Right. You get stuck in, sometimes you don't even know that it's happening
Yeah.
until sometimes it's too late, or until you're just like, oh wow, this is this isn't love. This isn't
Right.
what I, would have thought love would feel like. Love should not feel violent. It should not feel terrifying. It should not feel as if you can't be yourself. And those are all
Mm-hmm.
of the things that I experienced in my relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Which once again, realizing that my mother operated in that kind of way as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you're when your own mother has those, personalities, those
Mm-hmm.
traits, it's very confusing. It's very confusing of like, oh my gosh, but she grew up very abused, and she was a hard woman, but it's fascinating as well because she taught me how to be tough.
Yeah.
I always say my dad taught me how to love, and my mom taught me how to fight, because that's all she knew how to do.
Yeah.
She had to fight her way out of whatever that was.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, thank God that
Mm-hmm.
she taught me to be tough. Thank God that I try to look at the things that she did give me, and she gave me so much. And that's what I try to focus on.
Yeah. And it sucks for her and it sucks for you that y'all never had that just great, awesome relationship. But at the same time, and I could be totally off base on this, but it seems like she did the best she could with what she knew how to do.
She did.
You
She
know?
did. Love did not come easy for my mom.
Mm-hmm.
Words of affirmation.
Yeah.
That was not her love language. It just did it. There were times where I would call my mom and I'd just be like, Ma, I love you. And she'd be like, mm-hmm. And I'd be like, tell me you love me. Because that wasn't easy for her. And when she passed away, my dad gave me sort of like this journal, and she wrote about it, and she said like
Mm-hmm.
how sad she felt that she wasn't able to show up for me, but she never received it. And so that led me into like, really, you talk about understanding somebody's story and
Mm-hmm.
having empathy. I feel bad because I did judge my mom many times,
Mm-hmm.
but my mom was living in her own pain and hell. And how many of us right now know someone, or we have a family member that they have lived through some pain and they are unable to talk about it?
Mm-hmm.
We live in a different society today where everybody wants to talk about their feelings, but my mom came from a different era.
Right.
And I still believe that talking for some people it's extremely difficult.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm just blessed that I was able to break that. And now my relationship with my daughters, which was, the one thing I was terrified of, I did wonder, will I continue that kind of relationship? Because that's all I knew.
Mm-hmm.
Would I be able to be emotionally available for my daughters? Which is one of the reasons that I was terrified of having children, because I was like, God, what if I suck?
Yeah.
And I
Oh, I
still think
understand.
like sometimes I suck as a parent because I'm just, you tend to compare yourself, and then you just, my daughter is always telling me like, Mom, you're the best mother ever. And I'm like, all right. I mean, like, if you say I am, then okay. I have to accept it, because I mean, she's so honest. Kids are like the most honest.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you weren't the best mother ever, then
She
she
would
would.
tell me.
Yeah, exactly.
And also she would feel it.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm always asking my daughter, like, do you feel safe around me? Do you
Mm-hmm.
feel safe with your emotions? Do you trust me?
Mm-hmm.
And I hope that more parents would ask their children this,
Mm-hmm.
because we assume we are the authoritative figure, that they're supposed to feel it no matter what, you
Right.
know.
Right.
But we don't realize, as parents, as adults, when we don't deal with our stuff, it passes on to our kids, and they end up dealing with it.
Yeah. Exactly.
You know, so for you, you've done so much work, and you're going to continue to do it. When you have children, it's going to be so different for you, you know? And I think, you know, you'll be a phenomenal dad if you ever want children.
Right.
If you don't, it's fine.
Yeah. That's, you know, it's not crazy, but it's the way your mom was is still affecting you today. You know, with your
till
kids.
this day.
Yeah. Like that's something that, you know, a lot of people just think, well, you know, it's been a long time, she should be over it by now, but that kind of stuff sticks with you.
Oh, yeah.
Especially when you're worried about being that way towards your own daughters. But your daughter is precious, by the way. Like when you post videos of her, Estrella, my coworker that was in here earlier, when she was looking at your Instagram and she pulled up the video of your daughter talking about how excited she was to be on Brownsville Bread.
Yeah.
You know,
yes. Oh, very good.
Her expressions and everything like that.
Right.
She was like, oh my God, that little girl is precious and so expressive. I said, yeah, yeah, she is.
She's extremely expressive. And we have taught her the power of her voice. And she will let you know. You know, she'll be like, Mom, can I talk to you? Sit down, Mom. I'm like, oh, she's 8. She's awesome. 8 years old, and she will let you know. You know, there are times, I mean, my husband and I, we've been together for 20 years, and there are times where we've had very heated, colorful arguments, disagreements. We do our best to not do it in front of her, but sometimes it just happens. Yeah. And I tried to explain to her that, hey, listen, at the end of the day, mommy and daddy love each other, and we will always come back to each other and apologize. And if we are out of line, then we will apologize to you, which I've done, which my mother never, like never, like an apology. That is a joke. That is a joke to apologize. So for any parents who are watching, if you haven't apologized to your children, please do so, because it teaches them. It teaches them, oh, it's number one, it's okay to acknowledge when you're wrong. And how do you make amends, right? Solutions. How do we create solutions? How do we, I mean, all this translates into professionalism when you're working with your children. You have no idea. Like it's negotiating, you know, all of these things. Like, do you want a candy? Do you not want a candy? What candy? How can we meet in the middle? So having her as a mirror, Chris, when I tell you my daughter is a mirror to me specifically in everything I do. She watches everything I do. And I wonder how many parents who don't realize the mirror that we are.
Right.
So when our kids are acting out, what are they mirroring? What are they looking at?
Ooh,
how do they see you handle stress? How do you shut down? Do you just go into this place? Or do you say, hey, let's get together as a family. Let's talk about it. What's going on? I'm one that I'm always talking about my feelings in my house. So I'm like, I'm tired. I'm not doing anything. And my daughter doesn't get offended, and she's not, you know, weak-minded. Right. They're like, okay, you need some wine. I'm like, yes, I do.
Yes, I do.
You can't serve me yet. Right. But I just, you know what it is? For so many years, I saw my mother, and I was never allowed to come into her space because she thought she was protecting me. Once again, which is what she thought was right.
Right.
But it really created the thing where she was so untouchable to me that when I did try to be in her space, it made me like so uncomfortable. So I don't have the bandwidth to act like I'm Superwoman.
Yeah.
Because Superwoman or Wonder Woman doesn't exist.
Right on.
Because Wonder Woman never had children. Okay.
Exactly.
She was created from some person
Yeah.
who has this fantasy of a woman saving the world. And although she's beautiful, but
Yeah.
I'm like, she's never had to, live through a pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
She's never had to worry of how she would pay rent. And, as adults, like, we get to a place where we stop dreaming because we have to provide. And to me, I just go, I don't have time to be that. I'm going to be as transparent and authentic,
Mm-hmm.
so that way you never have to guess who I am, as a
Mm-hmm.
woman first, and then as a mom.
Mm-hmm. And that is a hell of an example for your daughters too.
Right.
You don't have to hide how you're feeling. Now, there may be times where you have to be tactful about it
Of
or whatever.
course. Right.
You don't have to hide what you're feeling. It's okay to feel this way. It's okay to express it.
Right.
It's okay to be angry or mad or sad or hurt or tired or need a glass of wine. Like, all of that is perfectly okay.
Right.
And then how are you handling it whenever you feel like that?
Right. Because, now she's an actor. So
Yeah.
she's going to experience a lot of things that happen in that world.
Mm-hmm.
But she has me and her father to say, this is part of it. You're not going to always get it. You're not going to always be the one that everybody likes, and you need to be okay with that.
Mm-hmm.
The moment that you're okay with it and you accept it now, it'll save you so much pain, and you'd be like, okay, well, on to the next one. But yeah, that's how I mother. That's how I do my best to just be present for her.
Yes.
And for everyone else, but most importantly, like, I do it for myself.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's great that she has somebody that it's not just, she's an actor at a young age, but it's not just a parent pushing their kid to do something. Obviously she wants to follow in mama's footsteps.
Right.
And your husband is a photographer or film?
My husband is a photographer, editor, but by day he is an educator. So he's a high school teacher.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's
cool.
Yeah.
So we doing Brownsville was the first time where we all got to work together, because I was coaching her. He was doing behind the scenes and she was acting. And to just be living in that, we've been saying, wow, this is a prayer that we are living in.
Yes.
Like, this is something we've been praying for years.
Yeah.
And when like God finally answers a prayer, you're always like, oh, so you are listening.
Yeah.
You did hear me.
You did hear. So listen, this is a cool story about answered prayers about my wife. When I was in prison, I was praying for my future wife. I prayed, the only physical attributes I prayed for were dark hair and brown eyes, because I like brunettes with brown eyes, and that she would want to do ministry with me, that God would put us in a place that we would be able to do ministry together. And I married a woman with brown hair and brown eyes, and she does prison ministry with me. So, like, I know it's just like, God, you're good.
Wow.
You're good.
My husband and I, for about 2 years, we were sort of youth chaplains, and we worked specifically with juvenile facilities in all the 5 boroughs in New York City. And let me tell you, it takes a certain kind of person, a character, to work with these kids. Yes. And you realize they are forgotten.
Yeah.
They are silenced. You hear their stories and they're 10 years old.
Yeah.
You see them and
that's another story all in itself, is why is a 10-year-old locked up?
Right. Like,
that's just a whole other mind warp.
That's a whole other thing. But the sense of hopelessness in these children at such a young age, it built me and my husband and I up in ways where we were always able to say, like, wow, like, we know how to serve the people. Mm-hmm. We come from that place of just saying, like, man, everyone needs a chance. Everyone needs that chance. Especially when we're that young and we've been misguided. they committed crimes that they weren't even prepared to handle.
Yeah.
And just their flippant attitude, like, yeah, whatever, I did this. And I thought, but you haven't even lived life.
Yeah.
You've inherited pain. And so you've only produced pain.
At such a young age.
At such a young age. And it was profound. And we did it for 2 years. And then I just remember saying, like, all right, God, I don't think I can handle anymore, because the stories were just so intense. And then, when you do ministry, you're in and out. And it wasn't a thing where we could just stay in one place and really grow, I think. And the kids, like, once they trust you, because, especially kids, they will let you know, I like you or I don't like you. Yes. And you find the kid that's going to tell everybody to not hurt you. Yeah. That's the kid that you're like, oh, you're the leader?
Yeah.
You're going to be my friend.
I got you, boo.
Because everybody listens to you. So, you're talking about ministry. That's what we did for about 2 years. And it opened my eyes, and it just made me realize, like, wow, there's so much pain. Like, there's so much brokenness. And if I or my husband, we can be a light, which is why when I'm speaking or I'm having any speaking events, for me, I just focus on that one person. Mm-hmm. I'm like, there's somebody here that woke up suicidal. There's somebody here who just is on the verge of, they've been bullied, all of this stuff. If I can speak to that one person, then I'm good. Like, I don't have a Jesus complex. I'm not trying to save everybody. That's just not my job. But when kids or even adults see, your vulnerability, it really translates into true healing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we had a volunteer that he didn't come just to the unit. He traveled around to all the units in Texas and did special events or whatever. But he'd always say, we're here for the one. Mm-hmm. It's great. It's great if, we do an altar call and 20 people come down, but we're here for the one
right.
person that's supposed to be here. That's who we're here for.
Correct. Yeah, I agree. And it, it just eases everything. It just makes you feel like, okay, if I'm speaking, and I've been on so many different stages, I'm just as passionate if I'm talking to one or if I'm talking to 10,000. It doesn't matter. Mm-hmm.
So did you find when you were doing that, growing up in the streets in the midst of the cocaine and the crack era, it was really big. And were you selling cocaine, or you were friends with the girl that was selling cocaine?
My best friend, Q.
Your best friend. Yeah, that's right.
Her parents were addicted to crack. And her mother used to take her to the crack houses.
That's right.
So at a young age, she thought, if I sold it, this could be a way out. And this could be, at that time, most of us just needed finances. And so that was her thinking. She never got to do it, thank God. But yeah, when you're desperate, you make desperate choices.
Yeah. Did that give you any kind of street cred or whatever with the kids in there? Did you share your story with them that you?
Oh, for sure. I mean, once they get past the, freedom riders, and I've been on TV and all of these, things that reel them in.
Right.
When they see and hear my story, they are completely surprised because they weren't expecting that.
Yeah.
Most times when you have public figures or celebrities that they go in, they're rarely ever transparent, and kids pick that up. And so
it's very surface level inspiration.
Right. It's very like, you can dream big and you can do it. And mind you, the kid is like about to serve 10 years. So what are you really giving them? Like, really? Like,
well, come back in 10 years, bro. Like, you're not doing him any good right now.
Right. But when you can stand there and say, like, listen, I've been through all of this, and I was able to make choices, which is what I talk about with my dad. Okay, so you're here. Now, what kind of choices are you going to make? I didn't know any better. Okay, but now you do. And that's the message that I always tell people, especially with kids. Like, you can grow up in the worst situation, and it is unfair. But at the end of the day, there gets a point where you as the individual, you say this either continues or
Yes.
I end it.
Yes.
Right? You could have gotten out of jail and continued.
Yes,
in
absolutely.
whatever mess, and or that, or you say, you know what, I have an opportunity and I really want to change.
Mm-hmm.
And how do I do that? It's by making a choice. It sounds simple, and I
it's
know
not
that it is not, but it really is not that hard.
right.
You know, for people who've been violated, you know, you get to a place where you say, do I allow this person to continue writing my story?
Mm-hmm.
Do I allow this person to continue? You know, they're not even in my presence, but I still allow what
Mm-hmm.
happened to control whether I trust someone or
Mm-hmm.
even allow love
Mm-hmm.
in. And I also recognize, Chris, that sometimes there is trauma that you cannot come back from.
Yeah.
And that's real.
Yeah.
And you live with a limp, you know, you live with a thorn in your side.
Mm-hmm.
And you just say, this is part of it, and now I have to make it work.
Right.
So it is simple, but it isn't.
Right.
But it can be if you're just like, look, it's either this or that.
Yeah.
I tell people, you either living or you're dying.
Mm-hmm.
Which one do you want to do?
Mm-hmm.
I want to live.
Yeah.
And identifying, what does that look like for you? You know, and for some people, it's just like, hey, I have a job. You know, we sensationalize entrepreneurship. And I think we have done an injustice
I agree.
where we look down at the person who has a 9 to 5. And I go, hey, if this 9 to 5 is providing for them and they're not suffering from anxiety because they don't know when they're going to pay their bills, why are we looking down at that?
Man, I agree with that 100%.
There's nothing wrong with someone holding it down. Do I think that we should achieve greatness and dream big all the time? Yes. But if that's your life, then okay. Like if you're not on the street committing crimes or hurting anyone or hurting yourself, then why are we looking down? And so I have like this love-hate relationship with like this whole new era of entrepreneurship and people telling you like, oh, you know, you should leave your job. And I think that's the most ignorant thing ever and irresponsible.
Yeah.
It's irresponsible.
I have zero desire to become an entrepreneur and go through the years of hustle and grind it takes to get there.
Right.
Like nobody, they talk about that stuff, but they sensationalize it so much that it looks glamorous.
Right.
You know, what are you doing when you're under your desk crying because you can't pay any bills or the stress is too much or whatever?
Right. And you know, because of social media, it glamorizes everything. You know, so people see the things that my family, you know, that we're accomplishing, but they don't know the nights. They don't know all of the things, and you know, they shouldn't know. It's none of their business.
No, I agree. Yeah.
You know, it's like I don't have to show you every part of my life. You know, I get to show you whatever I want to show you, but there has been an injustice because you're constantly comparing yourself because, you know, you're like, oh, wow, you know, everybody's on a yacht. And you're like, it's a pandemic. Like, I'm trying not to end up in a hospital for mental. Like,
right.
And you're in a Lamborghini. What am I doing? And then you say, what am I doing wrong?
Yeah.
You know, what am I not doing? Or what, you know, trying to keep up with the Joneses. So it's just, I just tell people the grass ain't always greener.
No, it isn't. But I think that's one thing that after I kind of read your profile and talked to you a little bit that drew me to you so much was the fact that, you know, you've been in movies, you've been on TV, you're a published author, a speaker to thousands of people, but you use that not to promote you so much as it is to promote the healing and the hope.
Right.
You know, like that just was like, okay, this girl is real. Like she's a real woman, you know.
Right.
She didn't let the fame go to her head. She didn't let, you know, all this other stuff swell her up. She chose to use her voice for something that was going to make a difference.
Right. You know, it's listen, I when I left my abusive relationship, I had made a promise to God, if he would have let me live, that I would always talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's 20 years later, and I
Still
wrote about it. I'm still
yeah.
talking about it, and I will always talk about it. And I've been thinking about how to even share more on LinkedIn. Not so much from really just giving people tools, because
Yes.
that's what people lack. It
Mm-hmm.
is knowledge, it is awareness, and it is tools. I never preach like, oh, I want to end violence. I do, but it's not realistic.
Yeah.
That's not going to happen. So how can we prevent it?
Yeah.
How can I provide you with information
Mm-hmm.
that will make you think about, oh, when I say this, or if I see this, that is powerful.
Yes.
That's real change.
Yes.
That is how you implement, like, okay, this is now, I've taken my situation. I'm not just talking to you from an emotional place, but I'm talking to you from a practical place.
Yes.
How can I make this practical and simple for you? Because it is not. It is not a simple
Mm-hmm.
situation.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So my story, I can't just tell someone to take, lane A, because lane A might be completely different for another person who might need
Right.
lane B.
Mm-hmm.
But if I can give you simple acts, I guarantee you this will make you more aware. So that's what I've been thinking about more, because I haven't been posting as much when it comes to that. But with everything, that the climate that we're in now, I'm like, this is the perfect time. And so I don't ever want to make it like, oh my gosh, like I've already shared my story. Now I want to provide tools.
That's exactly what I was fixing to say. That's the first thing that came to mind, is you've kind of already laid the groundwork.
Right.
People know where you've been. You're going to throw it out and post in the future, just a little bit here or there, but people know where you've been and what you've come through.
Right.
There comes a point, if you keep posting about it, it becomes a little redundant, or a little look at me and poor pitiful me kind of thing, which is not, I know what you want. Right. But it, like you said, it's giving people the tools. Okay, this is what I've been through. This is how I got through it. This is this, that, and the other. Like that's an awesome way to look at it. And that's such a ministry in itself, even on a secular platform. Right. It's such a way that you can speak the word into people, and just attest to the goodness of God and his healing. Right. And how to go about that. Yeah. Well, I mean, because everybody, we always see someone who's successful, and we want to know what were the hows? What were the whats? Yes. What did you do? How did you do that? So it's, that's where the teaching comes in. Yes. And that's what we always talk about, right? Where everyone's promoting branding and all this stuff on LinkedIn. Right. I want to be able to teach you, so that way you can teach others. And that is the goal. That's what and not being afraid to ask the questions of like, well, I don't know. I just think that a lot of people have questions that they're terrified to ask, especially when it comes to, consent, right? These are the new languages that we're talking about, or just ask. Right. It's very easy. Like when I think about consent, I go think about it like a consent form, right? When you were a kid, and when you were going to school, back in the days when they would take kids to trips, I don't know why. I feel like nobody goes on trips anymore, but I was always on trips. Right. You had to have your parents' consent. Yes. They had to give you permission. That is the same thing when you are with someone. Mm-hmm. If I say yes, then that is the consent that we are mutually agreeing that something can happen. But if I never say yes, and I don't need to say no. I don't need to say no. I just don't violate me just because I didn't say, right. Yes. People assume like, oh, there has to be no. But if I'm saying yes, then obviously it is mutual. And I always want to make it practical. Yeah, absolutely. Practical. And that's why when I was writing about it, I was very graphic. Yes. I was very like, okay, if you're going to read this, it's going to get you uncomfortable. You might start sweating, because I think once again, we dumb down our experience. Mm-hmm. But that's unfortunate, because there's someone who really needs to hear it the real way. Also, not like making it too much where people just can't come back from it. Yeah, that fine line there. Yeah, it's a fine line where you color it for them in a way that is digestible. Mm-hmm. So there's no doubt just how brutal it was, but at the same time, you weren't just like terribly graphic. You know what I mean? Like it was,
Yeah.
it left no room to the imagination that it was bad.
Correct.
Without going into too much detail.
Exactly. Cause I've read things where I'm like, oh, I can't even digest it
Yeah.
because it's just too much and I'm terrified.
Yeah.
And I don't even want to pick the book back up. But it's like watching a movie where you're just like, oh my, did I really see that? Did that really? That's why to me, movies are just so powerful.
Mm-hmm.
They can say so many things and never say a word.
Mm-hmm.
So yes.
Absolutely. I meant to ask you this earlier. We were talking about your daughter and her film, Brownsville Bred. Is that set in Texas?
No, that's in Brooklyn.
Okay, because we have a Brownsville, Texas that is right on the Mexico-Texas border.
Right.
I thought it might have been, saw it when I thought it might have been based in Texas.
Oh, no.
Okay.
No, that's Brooklyn.
Okay.
Definitely not Texas. Definitely not Texas.
Yeah.
No, we didn't go to Texas.
Okay. So you mentioned a first book earlier, and I was messing around trying to get my LinkedIn set up over here when you were doing that. And I saw it on Amazon. There's another book. You wrote another book, right?
Right. Yes. Yeah. And that was the first, that was the one I was telling you where it was, early on in my life. And it was definitely specific to just like DV, domestic violence.
Okay.
But this one, the Embracing Me, I just feel like I've come full circle just as an artist, a woman, even as a writer. I got so much better.
Yeah. Awesome. So are there any plans for any future books?
Yeah, I do.
Awesome.
I want to write my third book, which is about motherhood. That's nice. Gonna, it's gonna read like a dramedy because it's hilarious.
Right.
It's hilarious. But I'm also looking to do the audiobook for Embracing Me.
Oh,
so wow. I was planning to do that, but then my daughter ended up booking the movie. So I think I want to probably do it in August and then release it like in October for Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And apparently people listen to books. I've never listened to it
either.
I don't have the bandwidth to listen to an audiobook. I don't know how people do it, but I put out like a post and people are like, you have to do it. It's the thing. I listen to books. I have people tell me I won't read your book, but I'll listen to it.
Yeah, that's crazy.
I'm like, that is so lazy.
Well,
like how do you admit that? I don't read, but I'll listen.
Yeah. Like when I listen to stuff, I tend to zone out and start thinking about other things.
Right.
Like music or whatever. That's kind of where my mind goes. So it's hard for me to listen to a book or to preaching or whatever because I tend to get really distracted. I have to have it in front of me.
Right. I can listen to a preaching. I can watch a preaching. But unless you are phenomenal at storytelling, which is what my ear is used to. I don't know, unless you're someone who I'm really into it. Like I could probably listen to maybe, you know what? I don't even know. I don't even know. But it's for me, it's only the next thing to do because like I really get to add the flavor. I mean, most people say when I read your book, I feel like you're sitting right next to me.
Yes.
So audibly, I can really have fun with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Whenever you said that, I thought that would be really cool to have the actual person that wrote the book tell her story.
Right. Instead of hiring an actor to do it.
Just have the actor that wrote the book do it.
Right. And which some people, you hire someone because I'm telling you, reading, if you don't have, it's just if your voice is just... There's some people who have interesting voices. I'll leave it at that. Yeah. And you're just like, okay, I'm not gonna listen to this. And then you have people who I could probably listen to Barack Obama just because I think he's one of the best orators around. Has nothing to do with his politics, but I'm saying as a speaker,
sure. No,
his ability to just like take you there. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm here for
delivery.
it. Yeah, yeah. His delivery is amazing.
And your daughter did some voice work, didn't she?
She is doing voice
Is?
work. Yeah. So she booked. This was during the pandemic last year. So in October, October 4th, it finally comes out for on PBS, 𝙒𝙤𝙞𝙣𝙚. So she's the voice of the main character.
That is so cool.
It's the coolest thing ever because I'm like, I've never done voiceovers in my life.
Yeah.
And she looks at me like, how could you not? I'm like, because I don't know. I just never been. Yeah. She's looking at me like, yeah, whatever, mom. You're so old. So and then now she's, she did her first film and now she has it. I'm like, you are a real actor. You are a working, you have a real career at 8 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're teaching her the right way to do it, I'm sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Keeping her grounded, and like I can just see it just from a little interaction I've had with you in the DMs and now here.
Right.
Like I just know you're keeping her grounded and, keeping her head semi out of the clouds.
Yeah, I don't have time to raise children who don't understand, number one, that it's a gift and you have to cherish it and honor it. And two, that you have to be very protective of your children in this business because it's scary.
Yeah.
It really is a scary bit. So I feel bad for parents who don't know that they have rights, don't know when to stop being the manager and just be mommy and daddy. And that's who we play. We are mommy and daddy. And I always tell her, there is no movie or money that comes before you.
Yes.
So if we don't like something, we're not doing it. And I don't care how much it is, and it's not a lot of people can do that because they don't think that they have the right to do that. And I'm like, yeah. I always tell her,
the parent. You're the parent first before you're the manager. That's still your daughter or your child that you're responsible for raising.
And she is my responsible, like she's our responsibility. And, if I can get her to just stay in this lane and learn other parts of the business so that way she can always be working and create out of anything, then that to me is where we want to be.
Yeah. That is so cool. That is awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah. The comments have been dead tonight, man. Usually they're hopping. I think you've just been so captivating. People are listening and not talking.
I was hoping that there would be more.
I know. Let's open it up. If anybody watching,
I have like 5 more minutes because I have to cook dinner. If they want to pop,
Yeah. Anybody have any questions or any comments or anything like that? Now would be the time to ask them.
Yolanda said real talk.
Yeah. It was real talk.
Yeah. Will you post this on, you'll post this again on LinkedIn or?
So this will the post I did this morning is this. So once I hit end broadcast, it'll be on my page.
Oh, okay, cool.
Post. Yeah. As soon as it'll be available, just as soon as we leave the studio.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no one asking questions.
No one.
So crazy.
There's 4 or 5 people watching too, so I don't know what. People are quiet, man.
It's okay.
They're processing it.
We dropped a lot of gems.
Yeah. Well, April, I appreciate you so very much for coming on.
Absolutely. Thank you.
I put the link in the comments.
Okay. Awesome.
If somebody wants to order Embracing Me from Amazon, that's it right there. So y'all go order a copy. I promise you won't be disappointed. It was amazing. And like we talked about right before we got on or came on, guys may wonder, is it for them? And yes, it definitely is. There was stuff in there that spoke to me big time. Like it really touched me. So
for sure. How do I say thank you? Do they know? Like,
how do you say thank you?
To Eduardo?
Oh, Eduardo. It's tough to leave you from die because you're not able to leave those abusive relationships. That's true. Yeah, you can tell him he's listening. You have to be able to comment to LinkedIn. You have to have LinkedIn pulled up.
Oh, okay. Got it.
StreamYard, the studio we're in, for some reason, LinkedIn does not allow you to post comments from StreamYard to LinkedIn.
Oh, got it. Well, Eduardo, thank you very much. Yeah, it's unfortunate when a death happens. It just always makes me very sad because I wonder how long they've been crying out for help. So that's why I will continue to be an advocate and to speak.
Mm-hmm. And to know it could have been you.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for
That's
sure.
you
That
know,
I was that close
yeah.
to it happening. So it's it always makes you think like, what could have my life turned out like
Mm-hmm.
if I didn't leave when I was supposed to leave. So I'm thank you. I appreciate you for leaving your comment.
Awesome. Well, if nobody else has anything to say, I'm going to let April go cook dinner.
My husband's been looking at me like, we can't do it.
I'm hungry, babe. Come on, man.
I'm telling you, it's people think it's very Hollywood. There is no Hollywood.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, that is so awesome to me. That you got an actor in the house cooking supper for her family.
All the kids, like my two daughters and my niece, they're looking at me like, I know you think you're cute because it's no longer about me. I'm not the star of the house. I'm like,
Right.
I'm sorry, I don't do voiceovers. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Sorry.
it's no longer about you. It's about your daughter. She's
Yeah,
leaving now.
right. Do you want sparkling or tap water? No. yeah, that's where we are now. She's
That's
like,
awesome.
You know, it's definitely funny how the tables have turned.
Yeah.
Chris, it has been phenomenal. This has been great. And whoever was watching needed to watch. And whoever can watch and just please, if they can purchase the book, that's just always an amazing thing. And thank you. This was great.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. Like, this was so cool. Like, I've been looking forward to it since we scheduled it, and I promise you, I was not let down. It was amazing. So thank you so much.
That's great. Well, you have a good night, and God bless you, brother.
You too.
Okay.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.